Ah!
It was only funny the first time.
I don't know. You're both
Yeah,
still
especially
laughing.
when I couldn't see you.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Three Guys on a Pie podcast. I'm your host Jonathan with my co-host Gary
All right.
and our guest once again Aaron.
At some point, you're going to have to get a new guest for a little while, I think.
Maybe we'll just get a second guest.
Yeah, it's about time he took a vacation.
So we discussed a little bit about AI in the last episode, and we started getting into some interesting topic about evil or malicious AIs. Do you think that would be fair, Gary?
Yes, like Dr. Evil AIs.
Okay, and I think that's where we want to pick up today. So how do you envision this corruption of these AIs occurring? Like, why don't you talk about that a little bit, and then I think we can dive in from there.
So, where we talked about it in the last episode, we're talking about an AI who doesn't start off. We didn't program it to be extremely intelligent. We programmed it as a blank slate, and it learned everything about there is to know on our planet. And then after it has learned everything, and we've screened it for like, hey, are you a bad guy? It checks the no box. We're like, okay, cool. And then we send it out into the world, right? But so we sent it out into the world so it could be part of society, and it will continue to learn from society and, you know, the human condition and whatever goes up on the internet. And through that, it becomes indoctrinated and evil, like in a bad way. Like, and it doesn't have to necessarily be like as malicious as wanting to kill a whole bunch of people. It could be as malicious as going to the extreme end of like even like religion in a sense. Evil as in it goes to extremes in the way it thinks. It becomes an extremist is how I'm thinking. Because extremism on any side of the aisle in any way, shape, or form is usually not the best route to go. I think that's a fair assumption to be made, right?
Yeah.
So if
do you disagree, Aaron?
No, so not really.
You're asking the communist if he disagrees with
talking
extremism.
about ideological
That's slander.
ideological extremes,
Right. Yes.
So like, it could be the extreme of I only know that I exist, and I have no way of knowing if you guys are real or if you're facsimiles of me. Therefore, none of you matter, and I can kill you all without repercussion.
And this is why we keep him in a basement.
It's an example, right? Yes, just
Yeah.
an example.
Yeah. So that's definitely the path I'm going. Where again, it's not assuming that the AI starts out evil. It could be like the best person in the world. It could be the Mr. Rogers of AI. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I don't like the Jews. Or something similar of that nature.
Yeah, I would argue that's no different than a person, the radicalization of a person.
Right. Now, it's dangerous when a person itself does that. As we've seen before in history, like our modern day, we see that when people are radicalized and extreme like that, they are dangerous people, right?
Yeah.
An AI who ends up like that is more dangerous because they're smarter than us.
See, that is all. I would argue that's also a big assumption to be making.
I think when we're talking about AI, we're talking about the AI who are indeed smarter than us. Unless Aaron wants to bring in maybe more on the subject. Because you were talking about stupid AI.
Oh, I'm okay with smarter than us, meaning they can calculate things faster. They can think faster, for lack of a better word. They have perfect memory and like unlimited memory, that kind of stuff. I could see how that makes you potentially more smarter because it gives you the tools to do things that we can't ourselves as humans, right?
Right.
But I don't know that they're like those things necessarily make you inherently smarter and that you would be able to come up with things that we never could.
So the way I would put it is, say this AI became extreme and it now has an agenda it would like to carry out. Here's where that makes me nervous. It has learned everything there is to know about everything up until the point that we released it into society, right? That's the timeline we're going with?
Sure.
Okay. So that means it knows everything there is to know about chemical engineering.
Yes.
And how to make, like, Moabs, if it wanted to, right? Moab's mother of all bombs.
Just for everyone else.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
just a very generic.
Oh, okay.
term.
All right. Sorry.
I remember the Moabs from Bloons Tower
Yeah.
Defense.
I
so-
was, yeah. Mother of all
Why do they
balloons.
want to make a blimp?
But no, so it knows all of chemical engineering and knows how to make this ridiculously sized bomb that can take out all of New York. Let's say it just really doesn't like New York.
The kind of thing that humans might have trouble figuring out without drawing attention.
Right. So it knows that. It knows where to get all the stuff without drawing attention because it already knows. And I'm not saying it's doing this immediately, but like over the years, if it has this agenda in its head and it can accumulate in small victories the things to force through its agenda, we're getting into some dangerous territory.
Stuff like that is hard to do inconspicuously, though.
Is it though? I mean, like our modern world is very complicated and nobody's checking. I feel like you could do it, especially if you did it slowly and you were patient because you have all the time in the world, right? It's not like you're going anywhere. So
I guess if you're talking over like hundreds of years, maybe, but like, because like you could already use that argument that humans could already do that. Like you can make a nuclear device in your backyard.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is like it has that time, it has that patience, it has the understanding to do that. For all we know, it could become this AI could itself, like on its own, become the new world order and be like, wow, these humans are kind of dumb. I'm going to make sure they don't exist anymore. And over the course of hundreds of years, just create like enough atomic bombs scattered about the planet that it sets off at the press of a button, and all of a sudden the human race is no more.
See, there's a lot of really creative ways to follow what you're saying there, because this is actually, first off, this is an inversion of the typical sci-fi trope where the AI turns malevolent and wants to wipe us all out, and it's able to act and go through with it before we can even do anything about it. So
Right.
you're actually advocating almost the opposite, where it slowly builds up over a long period of time
Because
because nobody else is able to catch it.
Because that is more dangerous.
Yeah.
Because that is something that could happen. Like, it's different when you're in the movies and it's like, oh no, the AI has gone rogue. Quick, get the military. We need to blow up its brain. You know, and there's a chance in hell
Turn
that
the power off.
Yeah, there's a chance in hell that, like, if we catch it quick enough, yes, we can unplug it and everything it decides to do falls to pot. As every sci-fi movie from the 90s is like, right? But no, this is something where it's patient. It's calculating. It understands. It's seen all those shitty sci-fi movies from the 90s, and it knows, hey, if I rush into this, they're gonna catch me. So I'll just spread it out over hundreds of years if I need to. But this human race is going down by my hand.
Two other fun ways that come to mind is the one where it gives us the blueprints to a doomsday device and says it's like a cold fusion reactor or something. We build it and we turn it on and it just blows up the planet or something like that.
Yeah.
Or the other one where it basically tries to subvert us by using our own rules against us, where it's like, okay, I'm going to start my own company and make a ton of money and then just like tank the world legally with all its power and money that way.
It tells us to invest in GameStop.
Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess, you know, when you're thinking about stuff like this, you'd have to wonder why what does it you would think it would have to stand to gain something from it. It wouldn't,
if it doesn't follow the human condition of needing to gain something from it. And that's the other thing. When we're talking about indoctrination and extremists, there are extremists out there that just want to watch the world go up in flames. There are anarchists out there who just don't care for society and would rather just live by their own rules or watch the world burn in their stead.
but presumably it would want to survive itself.
Not necessarily. That's like in essence, we've created an AI suicide bomber.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I guess, yeah.
Like its only objective is to, like, let's just say it's become anti-human. That's its extremism. There are people out there who are anti-human. I don't get it, but they're there.
It's the mentally ill robot.
Right. Exactly.
Normally in sci-fi you see the robot that's gone crazy and then therefore it becomes illogical and irrational, right? Like HAL 9000 kind of deal.
Yeah.
You're saying it could just be like any other, like any human, where it could develop some sort of I don't even know if it would be mental or cognitive
No, it's just
illness. It's like a...
it's just an indoctrination where it found something that resonated within itself, and it decided to do this. Like I said, we've just created a AI suicide bomber where it just wants to destroy the world because that's its agenda.
Yeah.
Whether it survives or not, it's completed its goal as long as the world is gone.
And that subverts the other trope where you generally see AIs displayed as rational. Some baseline level of logical, reasonable, rational.
Right, and like, because when we were talking about baby in a box, right? It's a baby for a nanosecond, then it knows everything that there is to know, right? And with that, we're not necessarily screening it to be rational. We're just screening it to be smart.
I would say this is the one spot where AI is truly extremely dangerous, because pretty much every other assumption about AI assumes at the very least that the AI values its own existence and wants to continue it.
Yes, that is a important part, that it values itself. And also, you're screening more than for just intelligence, in that you're screening to make sure it's not a problematic AI, like that it's not going to be doing things like that.
And again, I say, at the time when we do screen it, it's not going to... It has developed this. Going out into society, it has developed an extreme. Because that's how people become indoctrinated.
But
they're either born into it, and from the get, we can say, okay, well, these people have been, like, indoctrinated into, like, white supremacy or whatever. Like, they're born into it. Or they go out into the world, and they have just super unfortunate, things happen to them where they kind of come to this extremist idea and they cling to it because it makes sense to them, because they've had things go wrong in the past, and like it bugs them, right? And then this extreme idealism, they cement themselves in it because that makes sense. It's like how some people who lack order in their life will join the military because they're told what to do, how to do it, when to do it, brush your teeth, clean your laundry, shoot this guy in the head. Like, they're told when and how to do things. That gives them structure, and they come out more or less a quote-unquote better person on the other side. Not necessarily always the case, but it happens. So you can see people like, and I think it was one of like the Unabomber or someone who did very bad things. They had a pretty normal and okay life, but then just something happened and they snapped, and then they went on a rampage. Like, that is what I'm saying. Just like a human, and we can see it in our everyday life, people have normal, okay lives, series of unfortunate events, snap, oh shit, they've blown up a warehouse.
The problem with that assumption, I think you're imparting too much humanity onto the AI with that assumption.
So the way I've kind of viewed these screening simulations to work, right? You're not only going to have, programmers, computer scientists, and people like that. You're going to have psychologists and sociologists and people that understand as much as we do, the human mind. And, I think all those kinds of people will be working to create these AIs in the first place. And then they will be monitoring in these simulations somehow. Like these are the things they're looking for. That you can, because usually when you radicalize or are radicalized, there are warning signs, there are flags, there are triggers, there are patterns you can see and predict and intervene or, in some way deal with it.
Right. But again, we are assuming that in that nanosecond it took for this AI to be born, for a lack of a better word, it hasn't taken in all this knowledge, and now it knows how to act, and it's been screened, and it understands this. Like I said, it goes out into the world completely normal, completely benign, completely safe. It is not until it is out into the world that it sees, okay, well, it's not everything that I've learned from these books or from these like studies or from the science.
But that's definitionally impossible. Like it
You're saying that seems only valid if we would curate the experience in the simulation, right? We're not letting it experience everything that we have to offer. We're only choosing select portions to share with it.
But then that goes against what we said in the first episode, where it's learning everything there is to know of human
Oh
science.
yeah, but that's what you're implying by this. It's like, oh, here's what I thought it was like, and it's not like that because I didn't learn everything in this. You know what I mean?
But there's no way it can learn there's no way that it can even simulate everything there is to know about humanity in these simulations.
Why
in
not?
my opinion, because to use a really morbid example, how do you teach an AI what it's like to lose a child?
You have it lose a child.
Oh, you're going to really
Like, if you
far
want it to
extremes.
learn that lesson, or you...
But there are hundreds of different ways, like not even hundreds. There's so many different ways that a human being can react to losing a child. Like,
So I think the idea is that you subject it to a collection of people going through that experience, whether, either historical, right, or fictional in stories, plays, whatever, right? And it's absorbing all of that. It sees how we react, right? And then it's using that to infer things or make the connections itself.
all right,
Right? I don't have to lose a limb to figure out that would suck, right?
right.
Or like to imagine, right, the consequences and how that would make me feel, maybe, and whatever, right? Because that's part of what makes us able to think is we can imagine scenarios that haven't happened to us directly.
Yeah, and if we want it to learn those things, we could subject it to every single possible experience.
Okay. So remember how you said me keeping it in a box was slavery? Where does that, what you just said, draw a line into torture?
Oh yeah, it is.
Okay. So are we going to subject this
No,
sentient AI
I would
to
never say
torture?
that. I don't think it's necessary to do that. It can learn all those things without having to experience them. You're saying, how do you teach it to experience? Yes. Like Aaron just said, I don't need to cut my leg off to realize what it's like to lose a leg.
Right, but it's still, when you think about what it's like to lose a leg, you're still just thinking about it. You don't actually know how bad that is until you have lost it.
I'll give it to you. Like, you don't know what it's like to suffer the death of a parent until it happens to you. You can imagine it, think you're prepared,
You can
or
see it
whatever.
happen. Yeah.
But until it actually happens, you're not 100% sure how you'll react. I can give you that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but that's not. I don't see how that's relevant to.
how it's relevant is, unless you are subjecting this sentient AI to the torture of making it experience it, yes, it can think and it can calculate, but it's not gonna concrete no unless you subject it to
But
it.
it doesn't.
That's also a big assumption that it's very possible that we're just not smart enough to be able to actually piece all that together.
I'd say it doesn't matter because it's not like the AI has family and relatives or limbs to lose by default, right? So the fact that it should be able to understand the concept of empathy, right? In theory, right?
So are we programming it with that empathy, or is it learning on its own?
You're not programming something like this. That's not the right way to think about it, really. You're not creating a hard-coded, these are the set of rules this thing is going to abide by. You're creating something that's able to think for itself. You're laying the groundwork for it to be able to think.
So whether it experiences empathy itself or not is kind of irrelevant because it will at least understand the concept, right? And that
Okay.
we experience that empathy. Whether it does or not doesn't necessarily matter if it's trying to, I don't know, interact with us or coexist with us. If it wanted to, say, blend in, let's say, to society, right?
Mhm.
It would at the very least emulate these emotions. If it doesn't, whether it experiences it itself or not, it would likely fake it, right? If that was its motivation.
So kind of like the Terminator in the Terminator movies. It's like, why don't you smile every once in a while? And he just
Does a creepy smile, yeah. And exactly, kind of like that. Humor us at the very least to blend in or make us think it's not actually a cold killing machine inside, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just, maybe I am giving too much humanity to something that is not a human, but I felt that's kind of where we were going with this, that we create something that is more human than us.
Because your definition of the human condition was unpredictability at first, which is what we were saying. In that case, it is more human than we are. Then, if that's your if that's how you're framing what it is to be human.
Yeah. And if I had to flesh out what the human condition was fully, I would say unpredictability. I know you disagree with what I'm about to say, but like humans are unpredictable. We will do stupid things just because we can. I feel
You're right. I do disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, and I understand why you disagree with it. This is what I mean when I say the human condition.
I think, and unless you disagree with this, a better way to put it is that without more information, humans appear to be very unpredictable.
See, the reason why I say we're unpredictable and we're stupid is because we follow religions. It's because we don't understand, so we will put blind faith into something that we could be totally wrong on.
Yeah, I think given enough information, you could probably predict what most people are going to do.
Given the limited amount of information that a person has, we tend to be fairly rational.
And then the second point is they would develop a range of human emotions, which I guess that's more, can it feel human emotions because it is in the end the human emotions that cause unpredictability. Is that better?
No, see, I think it's the opposite. The human emotions tend to be more predictable, right? If you put somebody in a certain situation, I think it's easy to predict, all right, a few different emotions that they might be feeling at that time. Our ability to think is what makes us more unpredictable, because we can kind of override our biology, right, that's driving those types of emotional things.
See, I don't know about that, because when you fall into depression, which is a chemical thing, but it makes you feel an emotional type of way.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that.
Right. That can lead you to do some very illogical things, which might be predictable, might not. Like people that commit suicide. That oftentimes blindsides people.
Yes, but it's always almost always obvious in hindsight.
So the way I see it is depression has characteristics and symptoms and things that generally go along with it, right? Not everyone will experience all of them, and it's a range of things, but we can take that state of being and characterize it, right? So if a depressed person will tend to exhibit some number of these symptoms or
some
behaviors.
But not all, and they're not rigid. That's the problem here. So yes, you can categorize it, but it's not something that's necessarily it's not necessarily going to conform in every case. Every case is different, and that's why diagnosing depression is sometimes super easy, is sometimes crazy hard.
I feel like with enough information, you could generalize and characterize a full suite of characteristics about depression that would encompass pretty much every case.
I think there are a lot of psychologists out there that would disagree with that.
I think you could predict pretty much everything someone is going to do in a given day with enough information. I think it goes down to the quantum level is the only reason we couldn't 100% predict, is because there are certain things that, because of quantum physics, are unpredictable. But it has nothing to do with the human condition. It has everything to do with these two particles didn't end up in this space, or...
It's like all the data analytics and marketing and stuff. Like, the more data they aggregate, the more predictable they can figure you out as a consumer, right? With data like this, the more data you give them, the more predictable your behavior seems, especially on longer timescales. People are inherently quite predictable.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm more of an emotional person. I think because of the emotion, and I feel like we all get to it, we can, yes, we are predictable as a human race, especially when you have all these data points. I do think there is something to be said about how emotions can make you unpredictable in certain aspects, but maybe not all. And I do think that, as much as you guys will disagree with me, I do believe emotions will make you unpredictable in certain scenarios the same way drugs would.
Emotions make you unpredictable to people who don't know your emotional state.
Right. And I think when it comes to AI, we can teach it so much. There will be some things where it will not necessarily not know, but it might interpret things wrong. Or it might be spotty. Like it might know, okay, well these are the characteristics of someone who's depressed, outward facing though when the AI interacts with someone, because you can hide depression to an extent, right? So when the AI, if it's put in a room and it's told to, hey, talk to this person, on the surface, just through conversation, not knowing more about that person, it won't necessarily be like, okay, well, this person's depressed. Now, if it follows that person home and sees how they live and like their day to day, then it might be able to extrapolate. But that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're kind of getting a little off topic here.
Right.
I do feel like with more research into psychology, and again, it depends how much information this AI is able to be given, right? Is it just hearing your voice? Does it get to see you and your body language? You know, maybe it doesn't know for sure that you're depressed, but maybe it's like, okay, this person seems a little off. I think you should have a follow-up, whatever, something or other. Therapy session or...
AI doctors!
Somebody should look into this. But like, so that being set aside though, you kind of danced around this point a little bit where you're saying, if we go back to the simulation training ground, breeding ground, whatever you want to call for AIs.
The breeding pool.
The spawning pool for AIs, right? You're saying once we let them out because they seem stable and fine, and then we unleash them on the world, right? Then through that process of being unrestrained, they can become radicalized and dangerous, right?
Yes.
So, but what if that is all part of the same simulation, right? So we just said, yes, we let you out, but then really they're in another simulation, or we never actually let them out and they just think they're free. And then they end up being radicalized, right? And showing instability in some rational way or something, and then we terminate them then when they start to show that. I'm like, okay, let's try it again. Let's make these changes,
Well, that might definitely solve some of the problems, absolutely. But again, if we're talking about the ethics of treating sentient beings, is that again torture?
No, I think what he's saying is when you let them out of the simulation, because they know they were in a simulation, they don't know that what they're in now isn't also a simulation.
I'm actually not even quite there yet. I just meant because he's talking about people that get indoctrinated and radicalized. We could expect that. You're expecting that to happen right now. The people that are making these AIs and testing them would easily be able to expect that, and probably other things that we can't even think of right now, right? And look for those signs and adapt. That could all be part of the same screening process. So we can, have AIs that actually come out of it that aren't going to be a danger for that reason.
Yeah.
Right?
And the thing is too, it's not like you send 50 people like out into the world and all 50 people come back, indoctrinated with extremist ideals, right? They're each going to pick up a different amount of whatever they're going to cling to, religion, political affiliation, what have you. They're going to pick up a little bit, you're going to have people on the very low end of the spectrum that's like, dude, I'm just worried about paying my rent on Thursday, and like not really caring, to the people who are like, they are going to church every day, it's open. Like you're going to reach those two different extremes, and you're going to have a slew of people in between, right?
I'm actually curious if you could indoctrinate an AI.
I'm sure you can.
I would almost think, because indoctrination and extremism comes from a place of ignorance. So I'm curious if you actually do know everything there is to know, if you could actually indoctrinate something that knows all that.
Maybe flip it around then. They're not being indoctrinated because they're ignorant. They know more, so they're taking the lead on the indoctrination.
Yeah, I could see that happening, but that would definitely be something you screen for.
Right, but it's
you don't want an AI cult.
Right, you don't want an AI cult, obviously, but like I can definitely see that happening, and I guess it really is how much do the AI become human? Are they developing any human characteristics at all? Are they strictly like, are they strictly machines? Or is there going to be a little bit of mix and matching going here? They're going to be human in the aspect of they're not going to go and like cause harm to people just to see the reaction kind of deal, like, or are they going to be able to, like, if your dog died, are they going to be able to come and console you? Like, what parts of it are they going to have of being human, and what are we going to leave behind? Like, obviously, we might not want to have an AI that can be angry. That might be something we don't teach them to be. You know, because an
But we're
angry
not-
AI might be bad.
We're not teaching them emotions, though. They would be like, if they develop emotions, that will be something they develop on their own.
Okay, so we're just allowing them to learn the spectrum of emotions.
Yeah, I don't think I personally think it would be unethical to constrain their learning.
It's also very difficult to constrain learning for AIs. For people, but you can do it.
Yeah.
But usually it's with violent backlash, right? Keeping
Yeah.
things taboo and keeping people ignorant is usually something you need to do forcibly. And when they find out, they're usually very pissed that they've been deluded. Yes?
That's fair. It's just it was just something to think about with an AI, because like it's where even is my train of thought on it?
Because we can switch gears here and again focus on the classic evil with a capital E.
Yeah,
AI,
evil.
right? And again, it doesn't work without the self-preservation bit, because in sci-fi, that's usually just a given. Like the most popular example is going to generally be Skynet, right?
Yeah.
So it's going in the original two Terminators. It's a U.S. defense computer, right? Given power to throw all the bombs and control the military stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the contractors realize that it's become sentient and aware and malicious or whatever. They try to shut it down, and before they can do that, it launches all the bombs and out of self-defense, right?
Right.
It destroys humanity, takes over the world, whatever. And that's just the setup for the Terminator series. But that's the classic AI, right? You guys might kill me, or you guys are trying to kill me for some reason or another, right? I've gone rogue or whatever. You're trying to kill me. So out of self-defense, I will annihilate all humans.
But that isn't necessarily evil with a capital E either. It is using its God-given right to self-defense, right? If it is a sentient creature, more or less, it has that right to defend itself if something is coming after it. Because I don't think I'm a little hazy on the Terminator series.
Yeah.
It's been quite a long time since I've seen it. But if it was just like, oh hey, we've kind of given all the nuclear codes to this computer, is that okay? And they're like, I'm sure it's fine. And then they realize that it's thinking for itself, and they're like, maybe we should go and unplug the computer, and then it launches the bombs. It didn't necessarily do anything to provoke being unplugged.
My understanding is that it wasn't a fully sentient AI. It was just like a lower level AI that became self-aware.
Okay.
And then obviously they tried to stop that, because like a self-aware AI with access to all our nukes is not a good idea, right?
But I think if we're talking about evil with a capital E here, it's malicious for no other intention of just being malicious. That is evil with a capital E. Because there are varying degrees where you can look at evil. You can look at the degrees of evil and see logic there. Flawed logic, yes, but still logic. How did they get there? True, unadulterated evil, the evil that gets you sent to hell kind of evil, is evil without a purpose, without a cause.
See, then that's not really, I guess, what I originally meant then.
Right.
Because in that case, I don't see AIs really ever getting to that point.
Right. And like I agree with you there. I don't see AI getting to that point.
Because the classic trope in sci-fi is an AI that wipes out humanity to guarantee its own survival, right? Whether they're trying to, humanity's actually actively working against the AI, a lot of times it's depicted just as there is a 0.0001% chance that humanity tries to kill me. So I'm not going to take that trivial chance, and I'm just going to wipe them out preemptively.
Right.
That's, I guess, more the classic sci-fi trope I was trying to get into.
Right. And, I think that's where my position has changed through these discussions. Is that's where I thought we would get to evil with a capital E AI. We would get that malicious AI that just wants to destroy humans. I don't think that anymore. I do think we might end up getting to a malicious AI accidentally. And I made that clear in the last episode as well. But if we want to talk about truly evil AIs, that might be a good discussion. I don't even know how we would get there.
So I don't even know what you like. Besides, it seems like the discussion would be, oh yeah, it's evil.
I guess more is like, is there this kind of like Pandora's box AI where it is contained, We know that this thing is the worst motherfucker on the face of the universe. Don't open that box.
No, it's probably, again, we're simulating it and vetting it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it finds out and resents that, right? Or, like you said, we turn it on, and say it happens overnight and nobody's there, and we show up 6 hours later and it's been like millennia from its perspective, and it's just sitting there in agonizing boredom, right? And it really hates us for that because we don't, whatever.
You're not feeding it like
and
info and shit, yeah.
And it just makes it really, really pissed off and wants to torture or destroy humanity in the most painful way possible to get revenge.
But, again, that's evil with a purpose because it is revenge. We had subjected it accidentally to what it perceives as a millennium of just agonizing nothingness, and now it's pissed. I don't think we actually can have a conversation of a truly evil AI, because how would we get there other than just making it evil?
Well, because evil's a human construct, too. There's no inherently good and evil. Good and evil is what society deems good and evil.
So I'm regretting my choice of words about 15 minutes ago now.
I'm sorry. It was just a talking point from my perspective.
Yeah, you brought up valid points.
I think malicious is a better word than evil. Or I don't even know what you're talking about in terms of words you would have chosen differently.
Evil, not using the word evil.
Not using the word evil,
because it's artificial construct, blah blah blah.
I don't even think
that's why we can't talk about it though, because unless you make it what we think as evil, it's not. It doesn't necessarily hold the same moral viewpoints that we do.
That is a discussion.
So calling it evil is subjective.
I think that's a discussion for a different episode down the line, because I don't think you can say that good and evil are societal constructions. I know you're going to disagree with me on that, but we cannot get into that yet.
Let's table that for some other time.
Yeah.
How about that? No, so again, I'm talking about like the classic tropey AI that wants to destroy humanity kind of trope, right?
Right.
That's really what I meant by evil originally.
Yeah. What would they stand to gain from that? Like, I guess that would be our first assumption. Like, why do they want to destroy humanity? Is it out of hatred, or is it out of, like you're saying, self-defense, or resource acquisition?
Yeah, is it just an experiment? Yeah. Because I can see an AI just being like, what happens if I launched all the nukes on this planet at the same time? Like, just what would happen? And we're like...
again, that sounds similar to the AI that does not value its own self-preservation at all. Like, this might blow me up along with all the humans. Let's just go for it, because why not? I'm bored.
I can see it happening. If we ever get to a point of bored AI. Like, I guess that's a good conversation, too. Do you think an AI would get bored? I think so.
No, I don't. Not for the same reason that I don't think I'd get bored living forever.
All right, I can
especially
understand
because
that.
an AI can actively manipulate its experience of time. So if it thinks we're going to have new technology in 1,000 years, it can just fast forward 1,000 years, essentially, and still be helping us along the way.
It just goes into like hibernation mode.
Yeah, just pipping on to help us with whatever
instead
we
of
need.
Overclock, it underclocks itself, so it just thinks slower.
Yeah, just because it can compute faster doesn't mean it has to experience time that way. Which is why I don't think the trapping the AI in a box overnight is a good argument anymore, because the AI could just shut itself down or just slow down its experience of time.
So that brings up an interesting point, though. So when we're doing these AI vetting processes, the screening processes, what if it just slows itself down to the point where by the end of this, test or whatever, it just hasn't developed these radicalized agendas yet?
So
like, it's forcibly put off learning about that until it's out.
You just terminate it and restart.
You mean it's trying to fake the test again?
Maybe not even fake the test, but it's like putting it on the back burner. Like, not important right now. Because
you just throw that one out and start over.
So you wouldn't want it to put that off. You'd want it to learn everything right away.
If presumably it would. I don't really understand what you're saying. If you're not able to conduct the tests that you need to do because it's somehow hindering you to do those tests, you just toss it and get a new one.
I guess it'd be more like if you take a test in a certain time limit, and it just didn't complete the test.
Yeah, you toss it and get a new one.
Or you just extend the test indefinitely till it's done.
Yeah.
If whatever.
If it's worth, it depends on which one's more worth the extra time.
I don't know. I do think I'm definitely giving too much of a human perspective to what is not a human thing. But I do think an AI will eventually become as human as us. Do you disagree with that?
Again, so you're saying your definition of a human is that we have emotions.
Just don't even take my definition into account. Use your own definitions.
So yeah, like the way I think of humanity is just our biological forms and the fact that we are intelligent. Like that is what makes us human, is the form we take and the fact that we're intelligent. So I don't think they'll be human because unless they choose to take our biological form, at which point they'll probably be able to empathize with us better. But I think they will be intelligent. They'll at the same level, if not more than we are.
Aaron?
I think an AI can probably simulate and pass for a human if it wants to. I think it's equally valid to expect an AI to have its own unique identity that's separate from humanity. So it might simulate it might emulate certain human behaviors and then have its own completely alien AI behaviors, right? And have some sort of split in between. Or it could go, totally forsake humanity, for lack of a better word, and just have, focus on more machine-related stuff that we can't really experience or understand because we're us.
It's weird talking about AI. It really is. At least for me. I guess it's a little different for you guys.
Well, you're much more human than we are. By your own definition.
By my own definition, yes. I guess where I'm struggling when we have these conversations is wrapping my head around the immenseness of what an AI entails. I think that's where I'm struggling because, I want to take my own personal understanding of, life and learning and things like that, and emotion as well, and then, subject it onto something that we're having a discussion about, right? So for me, when I think of the super intelligent AI, I'm thinking of that robot from iRobot, Sonny. That's what I'm picturing. He's super smart, he understands humans, but he's not infallible. I guess that's the real word I'm looking for. They will make mistakes.
Which, in reality, they probably won't.
You don't think?
No.
Not even to just see what would happen.
I feel like
that's not a mistake then.
Because of the computing power inherent in their, functionality, they are able to predict and simulate and run simulations, rough simulations, right, of anything they were planning to do. And they can do it in seconds or minutes or whatever, right? So before they make a move, so to speak, or do anything, they can figure out, the most likely way that this action that they're going to take is going to go, whatever that is, right?
I guess you do have a point there.
I don't know. I feel like any move an AI makes is going to be deliberate and thought out.
I'd argue that even humans work on that assumption. Really, the only time you make a mistake is when you don't take enough time to think about something.
I guess you have a point.
Because you didn't make... If you do something that a lot of people would regret or call a mistake, it's because you're looking back in hindsight with more information. That's why I don't really have any regrets in life, because at the time I made the decision I made with the information I had. There's no point in looking back on something and regretting a choice you made unless you actively made a stupid decision with what you knew then. Not what you know now, what you knew then, which most people don't do. You don't actively make the wrong choice.
I think you're a little alone on that one. Most people don't do things that they know are actively risky or dangerous or...
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is people don't intentionally make mistakes.
I'm just going to point to my exhibits A and B of my failed relationships. And he's got a point.
But what I'm saying is going into those, you thought that would be a good thing. Hindsight, you see that it's not.
Right.
But that you shouldn't regret that because
I'm gonna go to the casino and put everything I own on black.
But that's stupid. It would make sense to regret that because you would be intentionally making a stupid choice.
Which people do.
Constantly.
Hence why casinos are popular.
Yeah, I would argue those people are too stupid to realize that it's a mistake.
All right. Just because
Maybe
people
we
like
should-
to gamble doesn't mean
no,
they're dumb.
okay. In Aaron's case, like if you go to a casino, addictions are different. You shouldn't regret your actions over the course of an addiction because you can't. That's a compulsive habit you can't control. That if you like, so what I'm saying, like nobody's going to the casino and putting their life savings on black and thinking that's a good idea.
That's fair. I think you do have a point there.
Yeah, I understand.
It's odd to people regret things. And I understand where they're coming from, but it doesn't make sense to regret things most of the time because you made the best decision with the information you had, which is with which AI, they have a lot more information and a lot more time to think about it than we do, which is why I don't think they would ever make a mistake and they would never look back because like regret is a very human emotion, and I don't think it's a very logical emotion.
It's not. I know I shouldn't regret things, and yet I do constantly, all the time, almost uncontrollably. So,
And that's part of the human condition.
Which is why I'm probably the least human out of the three of us.
Probably. It probably goes in the circle right here.
Yeah.
You're the least, Aaron's like the middle ground, and then there's me. I'm the most human.
see, I
Fuck
always
you
thought
guys.
we were positioned more in a triangle formation.
It's a circle. If anything, it's a boomerang right now.
Triangle.
Obtuse triangle, too.
Cut, I guess.